Karl Malone was 20 years old, impregnated a 13-year-old, got the away from her, wanted nothing to do with the baby.
That clip right there is the reason Karl Malone's reputation has been in freefall for years. NBA legends, podcasters, fans, all of them have been dragging his name through the mud nonstop. But Mailman finally snapped and went after those who destroyed his reputation. The Mailman's empire and the cracks beneath it. Karl Malone is one of the greatest power forwards to ever lace up sneakers, and one of the most controversial figures in American sports history. Drafted 13th overall by the Utah Jazz in the 1985 NBA draft, the man they called the Mailman, because he always delivered, built a career so dominant that the numbers alone read like something out of a basketball fever dream. 36,928 career points, good for third all-time on the NBA's all-time scoring list. He pulled down 14,968 rebounds. He earned 2 MVP awards in 1997 and 1999. He made 14 All-Star teams, earned 11 consecutive first-team All-NBA selections, tied for the second most in league history behind only LeBron James, and received 3 All-Defensive first-team nods. His partnership with point guard John Stockton formed the most devastating pick-and-roll combination the sport has ever seen, turning the Utah Jazz into perennial contenders for the better part of 2 decades. His number 32 was retired by the Jazz in 2006, and he was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2010, both as an individual player and as a member of the legendary 1992 Dream Team. He won 2 Olympic gold medals in 1992 and 1996. He holds the all-time record for most free throws, made at 9,787, and most attempts at 13,188. By every statistical measure that exists in the sport of basketball, Karl Malone earned his place among the immortals. But there is a reason Karl Malone's name doesn't carry the same reverence as the legends he shared a court with. There is a reason his statue outside the arena in Salt Lake City draws protests instead of pilgrimages. There is a reason that, despite 36,000 points and all those accolades, a growing chorus of voices from the media, from fellow players, from fans who grew up watching him, argues that the NBA and the Utah Jazz should stop giving him a platform altogether. And there is a reason that when Malone finally decided to speak up about the state of basketball and the GOAT debate, the conversation immediately circled back to who he is as a person rather than what he accomplished as a player. The first and most damaging chapter of that story began before Karl Malone ever played a single professional basketball game. In 1983, while a 20-year-old sophomore playing college basketball at Louisiana Tech University, Malone fathered a child with Gloria Bell, who was just 13 years old at the time she gave birth. Some reports indicate that conception may have occurred when Bell was just 12. Under Louisiana law at the time, the age of consent was 17, which made this a clear-cut case of statutory violation against a minor. And yet no criminal charges were ever filed. According to reports that surfaced in the Salt Lake Tribune and ESPN, Gloria Bell's family chose not to pursue charges in large part because Malone was viewed as a neighborhood kid headed toward a lucrative professional basketball career, and they believed putting him behind bars would eliminate any possibility of financial support for the child. It was a decision rooted in economic survival, and one that allowed Malone to walk away from the situation without facing the legal consequences that his actions warranted. That child, Demetrius Bell, grew up to become an NFL offensive lineman who was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in 2008 and played professionally until 2015, but his path to that career was walked almost entirely alone. When Gloria Bell's family filed a paternity lawsuit in 1986, Malone's second year with the Utah Jazz, seeking $200 per week in child support, Malone initially denied paternity altogether. A Louisiana court ordered a DNA test, which confirmed Malone as the father with overwhelming probability. He was subsequently ordered to pay $125 per week in child support, plus past and future medical expenses. He later reached an out-of-court settlement, reportedly around 1988 or 1989, that allowed him to avoid formally acknowledging paternity in public at the time. The message was unmistakable. Karl Malone wanted this to go away, and he was willing to pay for that silence. And then came the moment that crystallized Malone's reputation for an entire generation of critics. When Demetrius Bell reached out as a teenager, around age 17, hoping to finally build some kind of relationship with his biological father, Malone told him point blank that it was too late for him to be a father, and that Demetrius would have to make it on his own. Demetrius later described the situation as if his mother had gone to a sperm bank. That rejection became one of the single most cited details in every article, podcast, and social media thread ever written about Karl Malone's character, a detail that follows him to this day and shows no signs of fading. The story has been retold countless times across countless platforms, but one of the most visceral and unfiltered breakdowns came on a podcast where the hosts dissected the entire sordid history with zero sugarcoating, and the fallout didn't stop at abandonment. The host went on to describe what happened when Malone finally came face to face with his son 17 years later, and the response was arguably crueler than the original silence had been.
Meets the kid 17 years later, 17 years old, says, listen, dog, it's too late for me to it's too late for me to be a dad to you. You got to go get it out the mud, get it on your own.
The assessment of what that pattern of behavior revealed about Malone's character was blunt. The Gloria Bell case was not an isolated incident in Malone's personal life. He also fathered twins, Daryl and Cheryl Ford, with Benita Ford when he was approximately 17 years old. A paternity lawsuit followed in the late 1980s after he had already entered the NBA. Malone initially refused DNA testing in that case as well, leading to protracted legal battles and contempt of court findings before yet another out-of-court settlement was reached. He reportedly did not reach out to the twins until they were 17-year-old basketball recruits around 1998, when their athletic potential suddenly made them relevant to his world. This pattern of behavior, multiple children born out of wedlock, initial denial of responsibility, aggressive legal resistance to support obligations, and belated reconciliation only after the children had proven their own worth, became a defining element of Malone's personal legacy and one that critics have never allowed the public to forget. Beyond the paternity controversies, Malone's on-court behavior added yet another layer of infamy to his career. He was widely regarded as one of the most physically punishing and dirtiest players in NBA history. The most infamous incident occurred on December 14, 1991, when Malone drove his elbow into Isaiah Thomas's face during a game against the Detroit Pistons, a blow so savage that Thomas required 40 stitches to close the wound. The NBA suspended Malone for a single game and fined him $10,000, a slap on the wrist that did nothing to curb his aggressive approach. Opponents like Dominique Wilkins openly confronted him over his rough tactics. During the 1997 Western Conference Finals, Hakeem Olajuwon called the Jazz dirty after another round of physical play from the team that Malone embodied. Then there was his public stance on Magic Johnson. When Magic revealed his HIV diagnosis in 1991 and later attempted to return to competitive basketball, Malone was one of the most vocal opponents of that return, publicly citing concerns about the health and safety of other players and their families. The comments drew immediate and widespread criticism for their insensitivity during what was already one of the most devastating and stigmatized moments in the history of professional sports. Malone essentially used his platform to fuel the fear and misinformation that surrounded HIV at the time, a stance that has aged terribly in the decades since. And then there was the Vanessa Bryant incident, which added yet another charge to an already lengthy rap sheet of off-court controversies. During Malone's brief championship-chasing stint with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2003-04, his final season in the NBA, playing alongside Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and Gary Payton at age 40, Kobe Bryant accused Malone of making inappropriate and suggestive comments to his wife, Vanessa Bryant, including a crude remark about hunting for young Mexican girls. Malone's agent confirmed portions of the account. The incident created a permanent feud between Malone and Kobe, and for a man already carrying the weight of the Gloria Bell case, it was gasoline poured onto an already raging inferno of public disapproval. Yet despite all of this, the involvement with a minor, the paternity denials, the dirty play, the insensitivity toward Magic Johnson, the Vanessa Bryant harassment, the NBA continued to invite Karl Malone to its biggest stages and most visible events. And that glaring contradiction is exactly where the next chapter of this story picks up. The NBA's double standard and the voices that refuse to stay silent. In February 2023, the NBA invited Karl Malone to serve as a celebrity judge at the All-Star Weekend Dunk Contest, one of the league's most watched and highest profile events. He appeared on screen, all smiles, celebrated by the broadcast team as though the controversies that have defined his off-court legacy for decades simply didn't exist. The backlash from the public was immediate, ferocious, and unrelenting. Rolling Stone published a scathing piece calling for Malone to be permanently banned from NBA events, detailing the Gloria Bell case, the Vanessa Bryant incident, and the broader pattern of behavior that they argued should disqualify him from any kind of league-sanctioned celebration. Meanwhile, the Salt Lake Tribune ran an opinion piece with the headline arguing The Utah Jazz needed to stop giving Karl Malone a platform. Social media erupted with outrage, and the NBA's official response? Silence. Complete and total silence. The podcast hosts, who had already eviscerated Malone's personal history, captured the absurdity of that All-Star Weekend moment with the kind of clarity that only unfiltered commentary can provide. After describing Malone's prominent appearance at the event, they drew a comparison to another league that, for all its own flaws, handled a similar situation very differently.
But that speaks to the difference between the NBA and NFL.
How?
Because Michael Irvin got straight dropped.
The comparison was devastating in its simplicity. Michael Irvin was removed from NFL festivities over an accusation of harassment. Not a conviction, not a confirmed act, not biological proof walking the earth, just an accusation. Meanwhile, Karl Malone sat courtside at the NBA's premier showcase with his documented history fully public and his biological child as living evidence of what happened in 1983.
Karl Malone out there, like, it's proven that this is your kid.
There's progeny running around that is proof of the act of rape.
The visual of Malone sitting in judgment at a dunk contest, literally scoring other people's performances, while his own history went completely unaddressed by the league, was not lost on the hosts. And then came the uncomfortable admission that nobody in that arena was going to confront him about any of it, because the man remains an absolute physical specimen even in retirement. The hosts readily conceded that Malone's basketball accomplishments are beyond dispute, a concession that only made their moral critique land harder. And then, the other host delivered the line that separated the basketball player from the man, once and for all. That word, that specific, legal, unflinching word, hung in the air. No euphemism, no softening, no controversy or incident. The hosts said publicly what many people across the basketball world had been saying only in private for years. And when they pointed out the reason nobody confronts Malone to his face about any of it, the explanation was equally blunt. The reality they were describing is one that has enabled Malone's comfortable existence at NBA events for decades. His sheer physical presence, still imposing well into his 60s, functions as an unspoken deterrent. Criticism stays on keyboards and podcast microphones. Nobody walks up to Karl Malone in person and says what thousands say about him online. The host captured that dynamic with brutal honesty. That observation cuts to the heart of how Malone has been able to maintain his position within NBA circles despite decades of controversy. The institution protects him, and social convention does the rest. People are willing to condemn him from the safety of anonymity, but when the 6'9", 260-pound Hall of Famer is standing right there, shoulders still as wide as they were in 1997, the courage evaporates. That gap between online outrage and real-world confrontation is exactly what allows the NBA to keep inviting him back, because as long as nobody makes a scene in person, the league can pretend the controversy doesn't exist. The NBA's willingness to continue platforming Malone also drew renewed scrutiny to his post-retirement relationship with the Jazz organization itself, which has been rocky to say the least. In 2012, after Malone publicly criticized the Jazz's handling of the situation involving Deron Williams and legendary head coach Jerry Sloan, accusing the franchise of enabling player power at the expense of a coaching icon, Jazz owner Greg Miller fired back publicly, calling Malone unreliable, unstable, and a liar. Miller's comments were unusually blunt for a team owner addressing a franchise legend. Malone had also reportedly expressed interest in coaching or assistant coaching roles with the Jazz and had been rebuffed. The two sides eventually reconciled, and by the Jazz's 50th anniversary season in 2024, Malone was once again being featured in celebratory events, which drew yet another wave of op-eds, social media backlash, and public questioning about why the franchise couldn't seem to quit a figure whose history made every celebration feel tone deaf. When confronted with questions about the public backlash over the years, Malone has responded with a consistent pattern of dismissiveness that has done nothing to quiet his critics. In 2023 interviews, he brushed off questions about his past with phrases like, "I don't care, whatever," and "I'm human." There's no public record of Malone engaging in any substantive way with the consequences of what happened in 1983. No formal apology to Gloria Bell, no public reckoning with the gravity of his actions, no accountability beyond the court-ordered child support payments that he initially fought tooth and nail to avoid paying. And so Karl Malone continued to exist in a strange, uncomfortable limbo, too statistically accomplished to be erased from the history books, too personally controversial to be fully embraced by the league that made him famous. His statue still stood outside the arena in Salt Lake City. His number still hung from the rafters, but his reputation, the intangible intangible quality that transforms raw statistics into an enduring, celebrated legacy, had been eroding steadily, year after year, podcast by podcast, viral clip by viral clip. The court of public opinion was rendering its verdict in slow motion. And while Malone had stayed largely quiet in 2025 and into 2026 regarding the state of his own reputation, the basketball world had been anything but silent when it came to discussing him. Malone fires back, the LeBron takedown, and the fight for his legacy. If Karl Malone's personal controversies represented the slow, grinding erosion of his public reputation, then his recent nationally televised comments on LeBron James represented the counterpunch, a deliberate attempt to reassert himself as a legitimate basketball authority, as a voice that still commands weight in the greatest of all-time debate, regardless of what anyone thinks about the life he's led off the court. And whether you agree with what Malone said or vehemently oppose it, there is no denying one central fact. The moment he opened his mouth, the entire basketball world stopped everything it was doing to listen. It started in January 2025. Malone sat down for what was supposed to be a routine, nostalgic interview with a major national sports network. The producers almost certainly anticipated a lighthearted conversation about the glory days of the Stockton to Malone era, some locker room stories, some polite, measured comments about the current state of the game, and maybe a gracious tip of the cap to the modern generation. What they got instead was a man who looked directly into the camera and delivered a searing, point-by-point dismantling of LeBron James's claim to the greatest ever title. No diplomacy, no hedging, no, he's definitely in the conversation platitudes that retired players usually deploy to avoid controversy. Malone went in with both barrels. He started with the question that frames the entire debate. What separates a great player from the greatest?
So what do we go off of, dude? Because this is the argument that I have today. Like, you know, like, better player is one thing.
Yes.
Like, is he just like, let's take away all the accolades?
For Malone, the distinction was clear and non-negotiable, being a better player in terms of raw physical talent and statistical. Accumulation was one category, but being the greatest of all time was an entirely different standard, one that LeBron's 4-6 finals record could not survive. He then pivoted to the benchmark he believed defined true, undeniable greatness: Jordan's flawless 6-0 record in the NBA Finals, his 6 Finals MVP awards, and the fact that most of those championship series didn't even require a Game 7. That was the standard Malone was holding every other player to. And he wasn't merely comparing numbers on a spreadsheet. He was comparing mentalities, philosophies, and the fundamental approach to competition that separates the great from the legendary. Malone then turned his attention to what he viewed as the fundamental weakness in LeBron's championship path: the super teams. He laid out the timeline with the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. 7 years in Cleveland the first time around, 0 championships. Then, the decision. LeBron announcing on national television that he was taking his talents to South Beach to join Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh, 2 established all-stars already in place. Even with that stacked Miami roster, LeBron came away with only 2 championships in 4 finals appearances, a 50% success rate with a super team. When the Miami experiment ran its course, he returned to Cleveland, but not before the front office acquired Kevin Love, yet another all-star, to stack the deck. That move delivered 1 championship before LeBron was gone again, this time to Los Angeles, where Anthony Davis, a top 5 player in the league, was already waiting. Every stop along the way, a ready-made co-star or 2 or 3. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan's story couldn't have been more different. He stayed in Chicago through every battle, every heartbreak, every devastating playoff loss. He didn't run to Detroit to join Isaiah Thomas. He didn't try to team up with Magic or Bird. He beat those legends. He took a raw, unknown rookie named Scottie Pippen and helped mold him into a Hall of Famer. He transformed the Bulls from a struggling franchise into the most dominant dynasty on the planet, all without ever changing jerseys. That, Malone argued, is the fundamental difference between greatness and the greatest. Then Malone went for the jugular, clutch performance. Those defining, legacy-making moments when the clock is winding down, the score is tied, and everyone in the arena knows exactly who is supposed to take the last shot. Malone described how Jordan and Kobe Bryant didn't just accept that pressure, they craved it. Their eyes lit up when everything came down to a single play. That killer instinct, that hunger to be the man who ends the game, was what separated the truly great from everyone else. And then Malone posed the question that LeBron's most passionate defenders absolutely despise. How many times have we seen LeBron pass up the final shot? How many times has he kicked the ball out to a role player in crunch time because he didn't want the blame if the shot rimmed out? And then came the dagger that Malone knew would cut deepest of all, the 2011 NBA Finals. LeBron's Miami Heat were overwhelming favorites against an aging Dallas Mavericks team led by Dirk Nowitzki. This was supposed to be the coronation, the moment LeBron silenced every critic and proved that the decision had been the right call all along. Instead, LeBron averaged under 18 points per game in that series, the lowest of his career in any finals appearance. In the fourth quarters of those games, the precise moments when superstars are supposed to rise up, seize control, and impose their will, LeBron looked hesitant, uncomfortable, and visibly reluctant to take the shots that a player of his generational caliber should have demanded. Dallas won in 6 games. Role players like Jason Terry, J.J. Barea, and Sean Marion looked hungrier, more confident, and more willing to take on the biggest moments than the man who had spent the entire offseason publicly crowning himself a champion. Malone called it exactly what it was, a collapse on the biggest stage in the sport, and he argued that moment is permanently seared into LeBron's legacy, a scar that no amount of subsequent highlight reels or statistical compilations can fully conceal. What made Malone's critique cut even deeper was the personal context from which it was delivered. This was not a man speaking from a throne of championship rings. Karl Malone knows, intimately and painfully, what it feels like to fall short when everything is on the line. He made 2 NBA Finals appearances in 1997 and 1998 and lost both times to Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls. He put up monster numbers year after year, dominated his era as thoroughly as any power forward in history, and still never won the ultimate prize. Yet he never once called himself the GOAT. That distinction matters enormously in this context. Malone wasn't speaking from a position of unchallenged supremacy. He was speaking from the hard-earned, scar-tissue wisdom of a man who understands exactly what it means to come up short, and who believes that very understanding is what qualifies him to say that LeBron's claim to the greatest ever crown doesn't survive serious scrutiny. The response to Malone's nationally televised takedown was immediate, volcanic, and wildly polarizing. Social media detonated, tweets, clips, reaction videos, and memes spreading like wildfire across every platform. YouTube breakdowns with titles like "Karl Malone breaks the internet with brutal LeBron take" and "Karl Malone shocks fans with brutal LeBron callout" racked up millions of views within days. But the single most telling response to everything Malone said was the one that didn't come. LeBron James, the man who tweets about politics, pop culture, social justice, and even his dinner plans, said absolutely nothing. No response tweets, no cryptic Instagram stories, no late-night subtweets, not a single word from his agent Rich Paul, or from any member of his inner circle. The same crew that ordinarily floods social media to spin the narrative whenever something negative drops about their client. Total, deafening, unmistakable radio silence. That silence carried more weight than any rebuttal ever could have. In the weeks that followed, other retired players began to chime in, not as boldly as Malone, but through likes on posts, questioning LeBron's GOAT status, through vague but pointed comments about championship DNA and what it truly takes to be considered a winner at the highest level. Malone had said out loud what a significant number of old school legends had been thinking and whispering for years. And once he broke that seal, the floodgates opened in ways that neither LeBron's camp nor the sports media establishment could control. But what is abundantly, undeniably clear is this: Karl Malone's story is far from over. His reputation is a battlefield, fiercely contested by those who remember his dominance on the court, and equally fiercely contested by those who refuse to let his actions off the court be erased, minimized, or forgotten. The Mailman may have retired from professional basketball 2 decades ago, but the fight for his legacy is still very much alive, still in the fourth quarter, still in the balance. And right now, nobody watching can say for certain who's winning. Thanks for watching. Check out other Cards on the Screen